Well, hello, everyone. It is great to see you here today. And it is great to be connected in this extraordinary effort, this extraordinary movement to depolarize American democracy, to build a house united, to revive a spirit of goodwill in our democracy in this democratic republic. And so this happens to be our final 2022 member meeting on the eve of the midterm election. And I just wanted to sort of offer a remark on that as we sort of go into the business of the night. And so, you know, it's a remarkable thing. Braver Angels has been going strong now since really about what has it been? Since about the summer of 2017 or so, spring or summer of 2017. Couple of people on this call maybe who are here even before I got around who could tell you exactly. And in that period of time, you know, we've seen extraordinary growth, not just in the number of people who are involved in the work that we do, the number of people who are active in local communities, people in the field, but in the breadth of activities and the number of institutions that we touch. And so tonight's a special meeting because you're going to get to hear from a cross-section of Braver Angels leaders who represent our work on campus with both college and high school students, our work with politicians in actual political campaigns, our work with events and organizational partners, and even our efforts in arts and culture and music. And so, you know, the way in which Braver Angels has grown have been remarkable to see. And it's something that I appreciate all the more on the eve of an election. Because, you know, the closer we draw towards election day, the more visceral so much of the hostility in our civic life seems to become, right? And so there's a bittersweetness to the success of Braver Angels, because on the one hand, when you're involved in this work, when you're a part of this community, it is so hard not to feel inspired. But of course, the occasion for that inspiration also happens to be, you know, the bitter sadness and the animosity of so much of our politics, right? And it would be one thing if that animosity, it would be one thing if that contempt that comes through from so much of the discourse didn't have consequences for the actual state of affairs in our country, if it didn't have consequences for our real lives, both in terms of our personal relationships with one another, as well as in terms of the way our government and our society and our institutions actually function. But it does. So that's why the work of Braver Angels is important. Now, many of you will have been in one or two of our previous member meetings, and you might have a sense of how this goes. But for those who don't, let me go ahead and orient you. We're going to be talking a bit in this call about some Braver Angels business. And by that, I simply mean, in this case, going into some different avenues of Braver Angels work. In an effort to sort of highlight the breadth of our activities so people can get a sense of sort of the macrocosm of Braver Angels initiative to depolarize our politics, to build this house united. And so you'll get a sense of the breadth of what it is we do. And you'll have an opportunity to ask questions about that work, anything you might want to know or might want clarity on, but you're not limited to that as we move into the Q&A portion of the evening. Braver Angels member meetings are meant to be a bit of an open floor for you to bring, yes, your questions, but also your comments, your concerns, even your criticisms. We take all three C's. And to give us the opportunity to be able to engage you on what it is you're really thinking. And if part of what you want to do is talk about or say something about the state of affairs in the country writ large, the concerns that bring you here, that's okay too. So I'll say a little bit more about the sort of, about the parameters for the Q&A segment as we go. But in a moment here, we are going to pivot to hearing from our panel of Braver Angels leaders. Actually, Randy, is there anything you need to say on the technical side of things before we begin?
We're going to be closing down the chat, so we aren't going to have a bunch of distractions. And for the Q&A, we want to make sure that if you do have questions, that you are able to raise your hand or chat to the Q&A manager. But we ask you not to chat to the panelists because that will be a little bit distracting for them. So I think that really covers it when it comes to technical stuff.
Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Well, Randy, let's go ahead then and hear from our Braver Angels leaders about the work that they are engaged in. And I think that it might be good, since we've already gotten used to the sound of your voice, Mr. Liaz, to have you begin by saying a little bit about who you are. What is your role and position with Braver Angels? If you even want to say a little bit about how you got involved. We're limited on time, but I think people would love to hear it. And then give us a window into your work in the area of strategic initiatives and projects. So let us know all about Randy Liaz.
All right, well, I'm very happy to. I'm Randy Liaz. I am Senior Director of Events and Partner Engagement, and I actually helped co-lead the strategic initiatives and events team with Steve House. And it's been a great ride so far. We've been together partnering with so many great organizations. The first thing I want to start off with is my work on events. It's definitely a passion for me. And actually just this past weekend, we had a really exciting event that perhaps some of the folks, the members here attended. It was a hybrid red-blue workshop, our very first hybrid red-blue workshop. It was a pilot for that format. And we got together groups in both California and Texas to have a wonderful event that really transcended geography. And we're doing many types of hybrid events, including workshops and debates. And so it's really exciting. And if anybody would like to get involved in technology, we definitely need some support from tech savvy folks, so they can reach out to me. And we're partnering with lots of really cool partners as well. From nonprofits, we just ran a workshop for the YMCA of USA, and corporations. So we've run events for Lucasfilm, and we're in conversation with Disney as well, which would be an amazing partnership for us. We also are partnering with leadership programs, especially through the extension programs that are housed at university systems. So the University of Wisconsin-Madison, their extension program is an amazing partner for us, and they have been reaching out to other extension programs to get them involved. And we've got a great proposal going out to raise money for that. There's even political parties like the Forward Party who are reaching out to us because they want our help in understanding how to advocate for their causes better, right? We don't partner in the same way with political organizations that have a point of view, but we do love to help organizations that want to better advocate for their own points of view to do that, to use the skills that we offer. And then we are partnering with Society Library, which is this great organization up in the Bay Area that charts out the information and perspectives on different issues that you might want to know about, and really gives a good base for entering an event with a good base of knowledge. So we're going to partner with them for early next year. We're hoping that this is getting off the ground. Also, the Cal Poly debate team, a triple hybrid debate which is going to have folks in NorCal, SoCal, and the Central Coast. And then the last thing I'll mention is the Braver Partners program, which we've just launched, and we're excited to ask our partners to make a little bit more of a public commitment to supporting our mission, and really get a lot of opportunities to engage in our programs, especially attending the convention next year. So we're very excited about all those programs, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much, Randy. And you did say this, Randy, but I do want to make this unambiguously clear for people listening, that any relationship we have with the Forward Party or any political party does not constitute a political endorsement of said party or their platform by Braver Angels. I do want to make that abundantly clear. But what we do at Braver Angels, and what we do seek to do with Republicans, Democrats, and other parties in kind, is to be able to share the spirit and the methodologies of our methods of communication in a way that can help depolarize the discourse across the partisan spectrum. And so in keeping with that mission, we're very excited about our relationship with the Forward Party, and hope that can expand to others as well. Up next, so thank you very much, Randy. Up next, making his debut, I believe, on a Braver Angels member call, V. Cangiano. V, tell us what brings you here and what initiative you are a part of.
Thank you, John. I'm V. Cangiano from the Connecticut Alliance Steering Committee, and Elizabeth Dahl, the director of Braver Politics, asked me to represent Braver Politics here tonight as she's hosting an in-person candidate debate right now. So since launching about 6 months ago, Braver Politics, which engages elected officials in the work of Braver Angels, has done a lot. They've been training new volunteers, volunteer leaders, hosting debates, town hall events, neighborhood conversations, both with candidates and elected officials, engaging federal and state legislators in red-blue workshops, one-on-one conversations, and also offering training for town council members, school boards, and staffs of elected officials in dealing better with constituents and colleagues. As an example, here in Connecticut, we recently hosted our first Braver Politics event, an online discussion between two Connecticut state representatives, one red and one blue, moderated by our own Bill Doherty. And it was a really refreshing example of two legislators who work well together across the divide, engaging in a moderated discussion about their backgrounds, their experiences, and also the challenges and opportunities around polarization in the state government. It went really well, and thanks to our media sponsor, Connecticut Public, and also our co-sponsor, the Rel Center for Public Service at UHeart, we had plenty of radio, TV, and print coverage. I think we had over 125 people turn out for the Zoom event, and that increased our mailing list by over 100 new subscribers. So if you're interested in learning more, there's a video of the event on the Braver Angels YouTube channel. You can find more information about the event also on our Connecticut website, ct.braverangels.org. And that is a quick update on Braver Politics and our Connecticut efforts.
Thank you very much, V. Short and sweet, and very grateful to have you here with us this evening. Very excited about your leadership. Okay, fantastic. Our next guest needs no introduction to the Braver Angels community, broadly speaking, but nevertheless, very happy to introduce April Lawson-Cornfield, director of our debates and public discourse work. And really, April does do and has done so much for Braver Angels that I imagine it might be difficult to encapsulate it all. But I do welcome you to try in the next few seconds, April. And so if you want to say a little bit about who you are, the work that you do, and the particular initiative that you're here to bring us up to speed on, I think folks would be very appreciative. So April, go ahead.
Happy to. Thank you. Yeah, that's a lot to squish into a little bit of time, but to give you just the thumbnail of that, I found Braver Angels while I was working for the New York Times, and I was working for David Brooks there, and we were both incredibly depressed after the 2016 election because we are both Never Trump Reds, and had not realized sufficiently the depth of the cultural divide in this country. And so we were looking for organizations, and I learned about Braver Angels and went on the bus tour of 2017, and actually just as a journalist to cover it, and totally fell in love with what I saw in the team, and most of all in the eyes of people at the end of workshops. There was just something really powerful in it. And I was like, I want to be part of this. Whatever it is, I want to be part of it. And so I volunteered for a while, joined the board. Eventually, we developed the debate program and did our first debate in 2018. And since then have expanded the debates to some work in high schools, a lot of work on college campuses, and a lot of both local and national debates. And I imagine that most folks here are somewhat familiar with our debate style, which, as you may know, is not quite the same as what a lot of people think of when they think of a debate. And so I want to share first the newest aspect of that, and then speak a little bit to our college campus work. The newest addition to the debate world is Braver Politics candidate debates. And so these are a little bit, even for those of you who are familiar with Braver Angels debates generally, like with a lot of different participants, community style, on campus, off campus, wherever, those are awesome and are one way that we do the collective search for truth that debates are for. In political races, you can't do a lot of those things because there will be a winner and a loser, and you can't really ask for vulnerability in the same way. And so what we are trying to do is we've surveyed voters, and they say that they want to be informed. That's what they want out of candidate debates. And so we've created a debate structure that is designed to create genuinely substantive debate and also clash, so that when people walk out of the debates, they can really feel like they have a better sense of the candidates and who they want to vote for. And then the other innovation is sourcing questions from regular people in a red-blue way, rather than from journalists who are the ones who typically write them. And so I'm happy to be talking about this today because we did our first one. We're in the pilot phase of this year, and so we'll do a total of 5 this year. The first one was last week. We got incredibly good evaluations. Over 80% of people in the audience said that all the questions were fair to both candidates and that candidates liked them. And anyway, it went really well. There are 2 more that are happening today. There's one on Friday, and then there's also one, I believe, Monday of the following week. And so that's an exciting new thing. And we'll be looking to do off-cycle elections with this next year. So if that applies in your area, keep that in mind. The other part of debates world that I want to just speak to briefly is campus debates. And so we've done, at this point, the Brave Angels debates were born on college campuses, and we've at this point done hundreds of debates on lots and lots of different campuses, every kind of school you can think of, community colleges, Ivies, big state schools, little private schools, religious colleges, military colleges, and everything in between. And we consistently find that it is an incredibly positive experience for students, and that they ask for more. And so the biggest evolution of that this year is that we got a $1.3 million grant from the Templeton Foundation to start to take our model. Yeah, we were excited about that, from like single events to building societies on college campuses that do this regularly over time. And to do that, we knew that we needed a partner that was really good at running college chapters. And so for that, we looked to Bridge USA. So I'll leave, hand the mic back to you, John, but we're lucky to have one of our partners, leaders from that organization here with us.
Well, thank you very much, April, for that very appropriate segue. And so, yeah, to take the ball from you and to pass it over, Ross Irwin, brother, friend, great to have you, man.
John, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Honored guest of Braver Angels here. And really, man, just a part of the family through and through, I'd say. Yeah. So tell us about yourself, Ross. What brings you to the work? Tell us about Bridge USA, and tell us about the joint efforts that we've so closely undertaken together as comrades in arms.
Yeah, so thank you, John, and thank you to the whole community for having me here today. My name is Ross Irwin. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Bridge USA. What that means is that I help us do all our stuff and help out the organization kind of as a whole. What brought me into this work was that I come from a very deep red place in California. We're up in the hills, kind of by Yosemite. It's a big logging community, big ranching community. And so whenever I was growing up, there were a lot of conservative people in my life. As the 2016 election came along, there were a lot of, Trump flags and a lot of support for Trump. Then I got accepted to go to UC Berkeley. And basically, a lot of my mentors and friends and all these people were like, you can't go down there, man. Like, they're going to hate you. They're going to rip you apart. They're all crazy. They want the worst for the world. And so it was the best school I got into. So I just went anyways. And once I got down there, those people said the same thing about the people from my hometown. They're like, how are you so normal? Like, I thought you'd be this crazy backwards hick coming from a place like that. And that's what really woke me up to the fact that our divide in this country was not just, this ambiguous kind of political thing, but that it was taking normal everyday people and making them hate and vilify and dehumanize people that they voted differently from. And so basically, Milo Yiannopoulos came to campus in the second semester of my freshman year, and it all erupted into flames. And about a week afterwards, a couple of my friends and I founded, the chapter of Bridge USA at UC Berkeley to talk about what does free speech mean on campus. And ever since then, I've been with Bridge USA. I graduated in 2020, and really what we do at Bridge USA is so similar to what y'all do at Braver Angels, which is why we work so closely together. We get along so well, as John alluded to. Basically, our mission is on high school campuses and college campuses to change the culture of political disagreement, to, instead of being one of division and hate and dehumanization, it should be one where we celebrate viewpoint diversity, where we willingly engage in conversation, are curious about people that are different from us, and most importantly, be oriented towards solutions, right? Like, so much of our politics is based on, like, you should hate that guy more than you hate me, right? It's not about how do we find solutions for everyday Americans, about the problems that we all see. So that's what we do. And I was very, very honored to have April and John and the rest of the Braver Angels team bring me into the Templeton project, because basically what we're trying to do is bring Bridge USA's expertise in creating a sustainable long-term college club, a group of students who are interested in this work and passionate about it, with Braver Angels' experience in running this specific debate program, and how, basically bring the community aspect and the programmatic aspect together and see what kind of an impact can we have on campuses. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to be working with y'all. I hope I see a lot more of everyone here. Thank you, John, for having me, and take the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Ross. And yes, indeed, your presence is very much appreciated. And it's just been a pleasure and a joy, of course, working not just with yourself personally, but the whole Bridge community. And I think we're incredibly excited about the incredible work that still lies ahead of us to do. So let's get to it. But first, I also want to hear from one, Mary Thomas Valens, affectionately known as Mary TV. Behind the scenes, Mary just gave us a whole sort of breakdown on her history with nicknames. So if folks call her MTV, I think that's acceptable as I understand it. But Mary has a very sort of unique lane in Braver Angels work, and one that I think deserves quite a bit more attention than it has gotten. Mary, am I correct in understanding that you are actually leading work that engages not just college, but high school students?
Yep.
That's amazing. Tell us about that initiative and your role in it.
Okay, and we even had an event with middle schoolers too. So anyway, we call ourselves the Braver Angels Education Network, and it's just a grassroots wing of the organization that kind of grew from the ground running. We meet monthly to address the polarization in schools and on school boards. Our work really blends well with the debate group and Bridge USA. The needs from this group have come knocking at our door. During COVID, high school students wanted a fishbowl exercise about whether or not to come back to school in person. One student heard about us, reached out to me, and the results of their fishbowl was shared with their school board, and both in-person and Zoom classes were the result of the conversation those students had. A high school yearbook controversy led to a specially designed and approved Skills for Challenging Conversations workshop, where we gave it to all 600 high school seniors there at that school. And then that workshop was just done in a similar format to New York high schoolers. Birmingham, Alabama students somehow found out about Braver Angels and contacted us. And Randy Liaz and we did an in-person common ground workshop about sex education in schools. Those students didn't have sex education and they wanted it, and their areas of agreement were shared with school board members and their parents. And this was both public schools and parochial schools. After witnessing a student shunned for her political beliefs at her school, a Washington, D.C. teen who actually believed differently than that student called on us to organize a depolarizing workshop for young adults that had students from 15 states attend. And some of those students are still in communication. Like some of the people before me have mentioned, community colleges and universities have sought out Braver Angels to their campuses. Using the innovation form that we have for Braver Angels, Braver Angel activities are now incorporated into some of the college campuses. And we've had some great experiences with that. Members of our groups have worked with superintendents of schools and other education leaders to address the politicalization of school board meetings in their communities and how to handle that. And this is just a tiny sampling of our work. Today's teens and young adults are really seeking an alternative to the largely negative tone around politics that they've actually experienced in their lifetimes. Some have actually told us they couldn't believe that civil conversations around hot topics were possible. So our group works to answer their calls, and we want to create braver teens who will lead us into the future.
Thank you very much, Mary, MTV. No, that is a very exciting report. And it's remarkable to think about the impact we could have if we showed young people a different way of doing politics at that stage in which their political and civic habits get formed, right? I mean, you know, if they can have an example other than what gets beamed into them through cable news and YouTube and so forth, I get the feeling we might be spending our energies in the right place. So thank you very much, Mary. And we might have some questions from folks about that work as we go. I'm going to take just a brief second to say a little bit in the absence of my partner and colleague and all-around good pal, Kieran O'Connor, about the work of Braver Angels Media and our sort of media engagement work in general. Of course, many of you will be listeners to the Braver Angels podcast, and the podcast continues to pick up listeners and have challenging conversations with elected officials, public intellectuals, while also lifting up the stories of Braver Angels grassroots leaders. And so I encourage people to like and share and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and across platforms. In our media outreach, there have been some exciting hits of late, and I'll just recount a few. But, you know, we have a very compelling pair of Braver Angels leaders, Barbara Thomas and Rick Hotchner, who are husband and wife. It's funny, I was with them in Los Angeles recently. We were all on the Dr. Phil show just a week and a half back. And that episode has not aired yet, but it should be coming out just on the eve of the midterms. And you'll see, if you get a chance to watch that episode of Dr. Phil, that Barbara and Rich stole the show. They also appeared recently on a segment with Chris Cuomo on his new show on News Nation, I think. And so this isn't the first time we've had Braver Angels couples, Braver Angels members showing up in mainstream press and other areas. But it's also an inspiring thing to reflect on the fact that really the stories we have to tell aren't just, you know, it's not the stories that come from me. It's not the stories that come from people with backgrounds in politics that are really deeply impactful. It's the stories of folks like you who show in your own personal lives how you're able to transcend the bitterness of political polarization in order to maintain the sanctity and the integrity of your relationships, your friendships, and your family and familial bonds. And so that's just a way of honoring a couple of our Braver Angels members who are spreading the word very effectively. And of course, Braver Angels weekend newsletters seek to capture the spirit of our grassroots organizing. Many of you get those on the weekends. We appreciate your feedback and your responses to those, as well as our weekday newsletter, which tends to capture the roster of Braver Angels activities and the catalogs of upcoming events that give you a sense of the different areas of engagement that are available to Braver Angels members, subscribers, and just interested followers all across the country on a weekly basis. So feel free to keep up with all of those items. And now, last but not least, I want to turn to my dear friend, an extraordinary talent and beautiful soul, Micah Hendler, to talk about, ironically, one of the more unsung parts of Angels' work. But we got to change that. Tell us about yourself, Micah, and tell us about Braver Angels music.
Preach. Thank you, John. And I just want to say how extraordinary it is, even just for me as someone involved in the movement, to hear what's happening across the organization is just like deeply inspiring and a real honor to be part of this panel and part of this movement. I came to this work actually via Jerusalem, where I founded a chorus for Israeli and Palestinian high school students, a chorus and dialogue project now 10 years ago. And as also the election in 2016 was coming around, and I was seeing how things here in the US were mirroring some of the dynamics that I had been working with in Jerusalem in protracted ethnic conflict situations, I was like, this is not good. I know this, and we need to find a different way. And so found Braver Angels through Sage Snyder, who is sort of the founder and torchbearer of our musical efforts, and was able to continue her work after that. One of the main things that was sort of kicked off the music work was the Braver Angels Song Contest in 2020. From which we got more than 200 submissions and singer-songwriters across the country, across the political spectrum, who wanted to harness their musical voices as a way of bringing people together, as a way of creating not just an intellectual level for what we're doing, but like a heart level for it, a way for people to really feel that there was actually some common identity maybe to be had in the movement as well, in a way that music is so good at creating. And so we've been really leveraging that community, having music-centered events for those songwriters, but also infusing music and its power to sort of change the tone, if you will, of events at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of otherwise non-musical events, in a way that can really, really take people into a different place, allow people to hear and listen in a new way, maybe sort of calm the nerves a little bit, and create more openness. And so we've been really excited to do that. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is that we're going to be trying to do another song contest this year that will hopefully culminate in the convention, and having some of those songwriters hopefully present for a big concert. So there's a lot to organize and also a lot to look forward to there. If anyone's interested in getting involved with that, like, we're really excited to sort of build power around that. And another that personally is closest to my heart is that we've started doing in-person music-centered events. And so the first one was a pilot that we actually did in Kenosha, Wisconsin, through Cameron Swallow, who's an amazing member of our team and a moderator and alliance leader who lives in Kenosha. And she organized basically a music festival bridge building event over a couple days. And the centerpiece of it was a Braver Angels Common Ground workshop that then we transitioned into a collaborative songwriting workshop with the same people who had done the Common Ground workshop, including some like city officials, business owners, local community members, who were basically trying to figure out, what does a rebuilding of Kenosha, of the parts of Kenosha that were destroyed, look like and feel like, and what should that be? And we created actually not only sort of a list of common principles, but then songs that they wrote and performed at the end of this festival to really bring their visions to life and collaborate in a really meaningful way. So we're excited to do more of that and hopefully get to do one of those workshops at the convention as well. So we're stoked.
Couldn't find the unmute button. Fantastic, Micah. Thank you very much, my friend. And no, it really is amazing to think about the incredibly impactful on the ground artistic and musical enterprises that Braver Angels has been launching. And again, I don't think everybody knows about that. I think that that's something that we need to do a better job of sort of lifting up. And so part of that is having you here to talk about it this evening. Very grateful to have you here, and always appreciate your presence. By the way, for folks who are able to stick around to the end, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, I think we will have a musical selection from one of our
True.
Braver Angels, one of our Braver Angels featured artists. And so
Preach.
that'll be
Yep.
well worth the listening. So
They're fun.
thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks, John.
Okay, beautiful. All right, and so now we get to the main part of the evening, which is hearing from all of you. And so, yes, we're going to be opening up the floor here for questions that our panelists can answer, for comments, for, again, concerns or critiques or whatever it is you want to share. A few quick guidelines on that front, however. Point number one is that you can ask the question, one, by either raising your hand or raising your Zoom hand, right? Some folks know how to do that. You can go to your toolbar at the bottom of your screen, and if you click the raise hand button, I should see it, or you might just raise your hand visually and I might scan the audience. If you don't want to articulate your question out loud, but still want to ask one, you can submit a question through the chat, and somebody will tap me on my shoulder with an invisible hand and point me to a box where I can read your question aloud. Let's do our best in the questions and comments not to go too far beyond about 30 or 40 seconds or so. I always say that, people always go a bit long, but I do have to commit to lovingly cutting people off if need be, just for the sake of time. I'm terribly hypocritical. Nobody's more long-winded than I am, but nevertheless, it's my job to keep the trains on track if I can manage it. And so let's go ahead and ask our questions. I will also make just one quick note. I don't always pick the questions perfectly in order. Some folks have pointed that out. Now and again, I'll jump around if it seems to me that we've had, say, a number of maybe blues ask a question in a row and we want to get a red in the conversation, or vice versa, or maybe we had a string of gentlemen and we want to make sure the ladies get involved. And so sometimes I jump around a little bit. And so if you see me doing that, just know that that's the reason why. Okay, excellent. And now time for questions. So folks, go ahead and raise your hands, and let's get everybody into the conversation as much as we can do so. Okay, all righty. I see. Well, let's just go ahead and start off with my old friend, Rita Chisholm. Rita, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us what you have to say. Is Rita unmuted? I actually don't, I see her on my participants window, but I don't actually see her on my screen.
She was
Randy, you
there
are
a minute ago and she's disappeared somehow.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm trying to allow her to unmute. Oh, wait, here we go. Ask to unmute. And I'm trying to add her as a spotlight as well. Okay, there we go.
Hi, Rita.
Thank you so much. I'd had no idea how timely this would be tonight. And I just messaged Mary to remind me to tell you about this, but I had my first one-to-one across the generations just earlier today. And guess where it was? It was a young woman in Maryland that was from Allegheny College. And I was thinking to myself, well, she must have just written in to find out, how to do it. Well, guess what? It was part of her class, I think it's a sociology class or something. So it was really, I'm just so surprised that it worked out this way. But yes, I'm really excited, and we've already set up our next meeting, so it does work. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that happy report, Rita. And yes, timely indeed. Okay, well, let's see. The next person I see here, and my screen looks a little bit different this time around, Randy. I guess because we have the panel feature enabled, so a little bit harder for me to visually just sweep the gallery. But I can still see hands raised in my participant bar here. So let's go to John Tressiter. John, I'm going to ask you to unmute and go ahead and jump in with your question or comment.
Well, yes. First of all, I'm a big fan of Braver Angels. I attended several debates and did one-on-one conversations, and it helped me understand better people who have different political views. And my question is, what are your thoughts about the new NBC News poll that showed around 80% of Republicans and Democrats view the opposing party as a existential threat?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Well, thank you very much, John. And I'm happy to go ahead and take a swing at that. But if somebody else in our group wants to render a thought on that, that's welcome as well. What I would say is that, I mean, it's a consequence of many things. In all reality, of course, politics is high stakes, and the deep and bitter enmity that exists between many Americans on account of politics is real. And when enmity and distrust takes root, of course, we do tend to do things to each other. We do tend to be willing to do things to each other that have real world consequences that can be threatening to a society. I offer that as a general statement without imputing or leveling a political charge at one side or the other, because it's not my place to do that in this context. But I say that simply to say that people do have legitimate concerns, and yet it's also true that our fear of one another and our distrust of one another is artificially exacerbated, I would argue, by an incentive structure that is captured in so many respects, the media complex, the political media, the political parties themselves, in a way to where our demonizing one another on the basis of our political affiliation is a pathway towards the gaining of ratings, the gaining of votes, the raising of dollars, right? And so as real and legitimate as many of our fears and concerns may be with respect to the activity of the other side, it's also true that those fears are actively stoked. And it makes it harder for us to arrive at that common ground and that trust that could potentially allow us to reason together towards a shared understanding of our problems that might allow for constructive compromise to rule the day, right? And so when I hear polling like that, that's just what it brings to my mind. So
Thank you. Well said.
thank you, John. And glad to have you here with us. Okay, let's go to another, let's find another question here. Do I have another hand raised? I see Hale Powell. Hale, let's go ahead, or maybe it's Holly, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, but would ask you to unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Hi, I've been involved with Braver Angels enthusiastically for 6 or 8 months, and I'm
Fantastic.
in New England, and I just want to address a problem that we seem to have in New England and perhaps in the rest of the country, and I am not clear yet, and that's the difficulty of engaging with members of the Red community and recruiting people to attend our meetings, to become members. And even though we try, we don't seem to be even remotely close to achieving a parity between red and blue participants in our meetings. And so my question is twofold, really. Is this a challenge nationally, A, and B, is Braver Angels at the national level perhaps developing specific strategies, a marketing plan, targeted outreach materials toward the Red community such that we can resolve this disparity of participation?
Indeed. And Mr. Powell, can I ask you, how do I pronounce your first name, if I can?
It's like Nathan Hale.
Hale. Okay. So I was right.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
making sure.
He was my father. Yeah, I'm just older. I'm just older than I look.
There we go. Well, you look great. You look great. But thank you very much, Hale Powell. Yeah, so the question that you're asking is not at all uncommon. It will vary somewhat, of course, according to location, what part of the country you're in, and so forth. There are a couple of things, I guess, worth keeping in mind here by way of context. And so, first of all, Braver Angels is indeed a cross-partisan, bipartisan, multi-partisan organization, but our leadership is evenly red-blue, and I mean that on the level of national staff, our regional leads, state coordinators, alliance co-chairs. We have as many liberal-leaning leaders as we have conservative-leaning leaders. On the level of membership, though, while we do have a greater popular participation of conservatives in our work than any other comparable organization, I think with the exception of Bridge USA, which again is another reason why we're so glad to work with them, there's still an imbalance there that tips a bit towards the blue side. And so, yes, I mean, that's an area in which we are actively committed to sort of rectifying that imbalance. But I think part of the Native context is the fact that, well, it's a couple of things. On the one hand, you know, there is a tradition of civic bridge building work in America that precedes Braver Angels. But the reputation of a lot of that work, fairly or unfairly, has been that much of it has been led by folks who, you know, may come from an academic background, may come from a background of professionals where the Native culture is sort of liberal or progressive leaning. And a lot of times the impression conservatives have gotten from that sort of work in the past is that it's less about creating an equal playing field for reds and blues to engage each other as peers with mutually valid concerns, but rather as sort of an opportunity for enlightened progressives to sort of, you know, tutor the savage, tame the savage conservative and, you know, show them the error of their ways and so forth. And so for some who are, you know, familiar with that or have a bit of a, you know, an impression, let's say, of that kind of work, I think there's a reticence to get involved. There's also the fact that, you know, Braver Angels sort of came into being in the aftermath of Donald Trump's victory in 2016. And there's a degree to which I think much of the energy towards depolarization was at least perceived as being sort of, you know, a reaction against Donald Trump. And of course, you know, we have leaders at Braver Angels who are Biden supporters and Trump supporters and people who are not particularly either. And so we exist to bring all these folks to the table. And so, you know, I wouldn't say that our organization in any sort of way is sort of, you know, officially sort of postured against one politician or the other, because we couldn't do what it is we do if that were the case. But I do think that there's a degree to which some folks on the right may just sort of assume that such work is rarely sincere in wanting to truly elevate and humanize their concerns.
Hey, John, can I jump in on this for a second?
Yes, you may, by all means.
Thank you. I would say two things. The first is that this is a very common concern, and it is in lots of aspects of our work. And I would push back a little bit on the narrative you were just sharing, John, in the sense that I think that there are a lot of bridging organizations in the US historically and today that aren't called bridging organizations. They're called churches, or they're called YMCAs, or they're called whatever. And so I think it's more about like what things are called than the actual work. And I actually don't think you probably disagree with that. But I would resist the temptation to believe that blues are inherently more interested in this than reds, because I really don't think that's true. I think it's a lot about language and framing, and frankly, the network effect, in that, like, if you live in certain places and are one color or the other, like, you're probably gonna have that kind of friends, right? Just easily. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just the way things are. The other thing I would say is people often think of this work as the real work starts once we get to the workshop, like once we get in there and around that table. That's not true. The work starts, in fact, the hardest and most important work you will do often is getting those people in the room. And so I understand how frustrating it is and have run into it myself, but don't give up, and don't feel like you failed because it's hard. Persevere, because that is the work. The thing that you're doing to get people to that workshop room is the work. And so groups will say, well, we're not having any success because we aren't getting people to workshops, but all the relationship building and outreach is part of what we're doing. So hopefully that's, I don't know if that's frustrating or hopeful, but I think it's true either way.
There you go. Thank you very much, April. And I think all that was very much worth saying. Let's go ahead and pull a question from the chat box very quickly. And this is from Rick Shrinker. I was introduced to Braver Angels at a regional Lutheran conference by retired Episcopal Bishop Mark Beckwith. Faith communities are as affected by polarization as any secular communities. Are you working with any groups of faith communities? Now, I know the answer to that question is absolutely yes. But looking at our panel here, Randy and or April, do either of you want to speak to any specifics with respect to Mr. Shrinker's question?
You can go
I'm
first,
going to
Randy.
defer to April to get it started, but I will certainly be happy to add a little bit of my experience after.
Totally. So there's a big focus on partnerships that we have this year. And also as part of the 2020 election Hold America Together work, we did a lot of outreach to specific religious organizations. And so we both have some significant relationships with leaders in the LDS, Mormon Church, in the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church. So those administrative structures we have good relationships into. The other, and that's sort of one piece of it. And then the other piece is working with individual churches and synagogues and mosques and all the rest. And so I had a phone call last week with the pastor of a sort of 1,000 person-ish church in the Bay Area, just east of Los Angeles. And he said, I really care about this. We've been trying to do this for years, but we don't really have the tools. Is there a way that we can get involved? And the answer is yes. We have the Community Collaborations Network, which is designed specifically to help specific organizations do that work. And so yes, there are, we are doing that. I mean, it's like all the rest of this in that we do our best to keep up with the demand, and there's always more to do. But yeah, that's a really strong, I think, deeply understand the importance and value of that, and are doing our best to keep up with it.
Yeah, very much agree.
Absolutely.
Randy, did you
I
want
meant
to throw something very quickly on top of that?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. So I can only speak to my experience with this. I have been working with mostly Jewish synagogues, actually. I come from a Jewish background, and in California, in various places around the state, I've had the pleasure of engaging with those organizations, with ongoing relationships, especially with one in Santa Barbara where I used to live. And it's just been a really exciting collaboration because, what's interesting about those synagogues is the patterns that we see sometimes in churches where there tends to be a little bit more red participation is a little bit mirrored in Jewish congregations where the most visible folks are often blue, and the reds in those communities feel like they may not have a sense of belonging as much as their friends. And they, it doesn't really feel very comfortable to speak up about that. And so we have come into these organizations that have said, yes, we understand this is a problem that's under the surface, and we want to really help to address that and help people really be more open with their beliefs. And it's been an absolute pleasure in working with them on debates and workshops and various types of other events. So yeah, really exciting work.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Randy, and thank you very much, April. And yes, very much share the sentiments. Okay, let's jump over now to Gary Peterson. Gary, let's go ahead and have you unmute and join the conversation. Go ahead, my friend.
I am brand new, literally this week, to Braver Angels. One of my largest frustrations with politics, politicians, the media, and all sorts of organizations, polls, is the fact that they decide what's important to me. They don't give me an option to say what is most important to me in this election. For me, it's democracy. If we don't have democracy, nothing else will happen. And there is no way to get the media or a politician or anybody else to sit there and say, what do you think, people? They all seem to decide that it is the economy, or it is abortion, or it is what, they don't give you an opportunity. I would like to see Braver Angels figure out a way to facilitate an open dialogue to get a larger input of what is important to the voter today.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Gary. And I do think that that's very much in line with the spirit of candidate debates that April and the team have pioneered. That's a model that's really focused on sort of harvesting that input and centering candidate engagement in a campaign context around those questions, rather than just prioritizing the whims and notions of journalists in its stead, right? But I think that there's probably a whole lot more that we can do in that direction. So thank you very much, Gary. Does anybody have anything they want to say in response to Gary's comments? Or okay, outstanding.
We did.
Oh, V, I see you, V. Jump in.
Thanks, John. Yeah, one thing you can also do is to log into the members portal. As a member, you will have, in fact, you can go right to the braverpolitics.org address. It's just part of the Braver Angels website. And if you're logged in or look down on that page, you'll see the members resources. And by connecting into the member resources, you can see a lot of the programs and offerings that are already kind of in the works for engaging elected officials in your area. And that could be at the municipal level, it could be at the state level. So that may definitely be something you might even be interested in exploring and seeing if you might want to get involved with.
Okay.
Thank
Outstanding.
you.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, V. Thank you very much, Gary. And I see a question here in the box. Let's see. Let me just pull this one out really quick. Michael Pancook asks, are ranked choice voting or other alternative election methods an issue that Braver Angels works on or is considering exploring in the future? You know, the short answer to that question is that Braver Angels has, well, Mary, I see your hand. One thing I was going to say very quickly is that Braver Angels has never endorsed a policy position. I sort of think that there might be a conversation to be had about procedural sorts of policies along those lines. But what we do is in various ways provide forums for the discussion and deliberation of such reforms. But Mary, why don't you go ahead and jump in on that point?
So I've been a moderator for Common Ground workshops, at least 2, and I think there's another one I'm scheduled for on elections and how to have elections where people feel that they're safe and trustworthy and whatever. And ranked choice voting and the 5 vote, is that the right way to call it? Those ideas have come up and people are discussing them in that election framework. I know Braver Angels has a big initiative to really carry the Common Ground workshops on elections. And so I think that would be a great vehicle to have it. And maybe if people wanted to send in those specific topics to Braver Angels, maybe a fishbowl or another event could just focus on the different types of voting, not just how elections are handled in terms of ballot boxes and in-person voting and whatnot. But I know that's going to be a big initiative this coming year on elections and how we handle them.
There you go. Yeah, that's fantastic, Mary. Thank you very much. And of course, you know, there was some reference made earlier to some of our sort of, you know, collaborative programmatic work with the Forward Party, Andrew Yang. And of course, this is an issue set that Andrew is very much focused on. And one thing I might mention is that we have an interesting Twitter-based event coming up on November 14th in partnership with Bridge USA and the folks over at Starts With Us, featuring a number of folks in a conversation moderated by myself, including Andrew Yang and Batia Ungar-Sargon from Newsweek and others, talking about the big drivers of polarization in American politics after the midterms. And I know that Andrew is going to be on there with me and with some of us talking about some of these electoral reforms. And so if you're on Twitter on November 14th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, you can join us and hear us talking to Andrew Yang about that, along with some of our friends from Bridge USA. So, okay. Let's see. Let us go next now to Bonnie Johnstone. Bonnie, let's go ahead and have you unmute and join the conversation.
Okay. Hi. I just need to say, and I'm maybe asking for advice how to deal with this. More and more, I've most of my life leaned blue, quote, liberal, unquote, but with the passage of time, more and more, I'm leaning towards the center. Sometimes I vote a la Republican, much to the shock and consternation of many Democrat friends.
Sure.
And I try to explain why. Here in California, I'm voting for the state controller. I'm voting for the Republican candidate. To me, he's way above the Democrat candidate. I research candidates. And this sounds silly, but I'm hoping, you know, when you ask, in the registrations, do you lean right? Do you
Mhm.
lean blue? Prefer not to say. Could we have a purple category? And I take it issue by issue, in my voting, in my thinking, in my opinions, much to the upset of some people. And it's hard for me personally to do it, but I mean, to express myself, but
Right.
that's to me, my personal integrity. And I'm hoping for the day when we don't need to label each other. And
Yes,
it
indeed.
just,
Mhm.
I lost my thought, I'm sorry.
No, Bonnie, I think that you made, I
It
think that you
just
made the
makes
point.
sense. Oh.
Yeah.
You had the discussion about a couple of weeks ago, the little debates, and you were either put in a blue camp or the red camp.
Mm.
And when I registered, I signed up, I wrote undecided, lean neither way, prefer not to say. So they threw me into the red discussion.
Hmm.
And I thought, I want to be in both. You
Gotcha.
know, dang it, why
Well,
didn't
Well, Bonnie,
Bravery just
thank
keep
you
them
very
separate?
much, Bonnie. Yes, let's
Thank you.
let's keep going. But I do think that you're raising an issue that's well worth raising, and I think that certainly there's a tension here that's that's totally legitimate to identify, because on the one hand, part of the tragedy of our political environment is that we are not able to see one another beyond the political label and the stereotypes we might associate with that so much of the time. On the other hand, of course, we live in a world of labels and categories in which part of what we have to do is reckon with the honest differences that exist between us on account of not just our affiliations, but the differences in our ideologies and our perspectives. And so that's why it seems important to us to build a bridge between red and blue in general, because while the terms red and blue or left and right or liberal or conservative are insufficient to really sort of call to light the true complexity of the human beings who wear these labels or who have these labels put on them, they nevertheless do represent real divides that have to be identified. But I think the big thing I'd want to say, Bonnie, is that Braver Angels, we need to be clear about the fact that we are every bit as much a home for beautiful purple people eaters. I don't know, for purple Americans, as much as we are red and blue Americans, right? And so, most of our workshops and programs don't actually require you to be red or blue one way or the other. And I think, but some of them do for purposes related to what I just said a moment ago. However, many of our most dedicated members, leaders, volunteers are people who are politically independent or don't think of themselves as leaning particularly left or right. And their voices are just as important here as anybody else's. And so I just want to affirm very much that is true. And as far as the intake form is concerned, I think that we do have option to not identify as either red or blue. I do think that that's an option on the form at this point. But I suppose we could just make it an explicitly purple category. That's something perhaps we can take under advisement. So thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you. And I just want to add a little humor. Maybe instead of registering Republican or Democrat, we could register for the birthday party.
There you go. Yes, the birthday party should bring us all together. I agree. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And let us go now to Walter Ruby. Walter, let's go ahead and have you unmute. And yes, jump on in. The water's warm.
Well, thank you so much, John. Yeah, this is also my first time in Braver Angels, so it's been it's been fascinating. I should say that I worked for many years, since about 2007, in Muslim-Jewish relations across America and also in Europe, and saw incredible progress in that field, and helped to facilitate dialogues between many synagogues and mosques in many different cities. Anyway, but it's felt to me that, it's so interesting because religion was such a huge thing between, for much of history, causing incredible bloodshed and all the rest that went with it, the differences over religion. And yet today it feels in America that politics is much more divisive than religion. At least that's my perspective. But I just did want to, I think April was talking early on about some of these debates that Braver Angels has been playing a role in, or maybe one of the other groups related to Braver Angels, Braver Politics. Anyway, I think you said that it was you were trying to create substantive debates, but also that there was a clash. And so I guess I'd like a little bit, more on how that works. I mean, how is that different than what normally goes on? What normally goes on in all these debates we're seeing on TV and so forth?
Absolutely. Yeah. I thank you for that question. So, and just to clarify terms, because I know they can be confusing, Braver Angels is all of us. And then there are like sort of teams that work on particular things. And Braver Politics is the team that works on stuff that particularly relates to political candidates or elected officials. And so the Braver Politics candidate debates, like I said, they're different from Braver Angels debates, and that's the difference I was focused on. So let me try to clarify what the difference is with regular candidate debates and what we're trying to do there. One of the significant critiques that we find of typical debates on TV and elsewhere is that the candidates do not respond to one another. They simply assert they ignore the questions. So the questions are written by journalists who come from a skewed perspective of some kind. And then the candidates don't answer the questions, and then they don't respond to each other. And also they skip around from topic to topic so fast, saying only what they wanted to say anyway, that it's hard to even tell what they believe, or how, in some cases, how they're different from one another on issues, as opposed to like, this person's talking a lot about abortion, this person's talking a lot about climate, kind of thing. And so what we're doing is, first of all, sourcing the questions from the constituents, from the folks in the district, and then using an equally red-blue half and half group of community leaders to filter those topics into like well-framed questions that speak to the local issue that folks are trying to get at. And I'll give an example of this in a minute. And then we actually, I'll just go ahead and say now. So for example, we did a debate. The debate that was last week was, I believe, the 9th state legislative district in Washington state. I could have that number wrong. 9th could be this week. But and so voters said, I really want to hear about the environment. And what that actually means for the 9th district in Washington right now is there's a particular river that has 3 dams on it that are interfering with salmon. And so if they take out those dams, that will hurt the power grid, but it would help the salmon. And so like it's figuring out, how do we ask the questions that are actually relevant to that local place. And then during the debate itself, there are, again, we're trying to create civility. So something that is not so vitriolic and name calling. And so we have ground rules. For example, we ask candidates not to say Republicans or Democrats unless they're referring to a particular body that has done a particular action. So you can say, my opponent's party in the state legislature did this thing, but you wouldn't say Republicans always do that or Democrats always do that. And then we also have interventions that are designed to, really, it's kind of simple. We have fewer topics and more time per topic. And so we only took on, I think, 4 topics in an hour-long debate. And what that meant is that each candidate got to say their initial thing, but then the moderator was like, and what is your response to this piece? And what is your response to this piece? And what is your response to that response? And you ask the questions. It's not about being forceful, but it's being persistent and saying, okay, but respond to that point that this person raised, such that you can actually, by the end of the debate, I was pleased because I felt like if I lived in that district, I would know where they each stood on the issue of the Snake River Dam, and I would know who I wanted to vote for, because they actually said substantive things and their differences were revealed in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Walter. Thank you very much, April. And let me go ahead and pick a question here out of the hat very quickly. From Carol O'Neill, does Braver Angels have any plans to reach out to / develop initiatives to work with the media both social and broadcast, which I feel is a huge source of conflict and polarization. And I do regret that we don't have Kieran O'Connor or Monica Guzman on here to talk about this in more detail. But I mean, the short answer is certainly yes, and we have had collaborative enterprises with some major organs, including Gannett Publishing / USA Today. We had a very comprehensive relationship with USA Today in the city of Cincinnati, where, if I recall, they gave some strong coverage to Braver Angels on the ground work through one of our local alliances, or maybe it was through a number of our alliances, with an emphasis on sort of covering conversations, I think, taking place between Reds and members of the press, and sort of bringing some attention to conservative distrust of the media establishment, mainstream media establishment, which is a topic well worth examining, that we were able to facilitate there in a local context. Of course, I myself am an opinion columnist for USA Today, and I think that that's perhaps a reflection of their interest in the larger kind of bridging field, which has been good to see. And I know that there are other examples as well. And now on the social media front, we've had some limited interaction with Facebook. We've had some limited interaction with YouTube, and we've had the hope that we might be able to, I don't know, do something to be able to sort of nudge sort of the kind of the sort of normative understanding of how you create sort of a digital marketplace of political conversation within these major corporations towards a setting of an environment that really is focused in on humanizing people across the divides. But that is a huge undertaking. We do have a bit of a relationship with Tristan Harris and the Center for Humane Technology. If anybody's familiar with the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, where we've been talking with them a bit, not just them, but with other organizations in both peacekeeping and depolarization and technology reform, about how is it that we can take the practices that we know lead to constructive depolarizing social interactions in the physical world and seed those norms in the culture of digital design in the tech space. And so there's some nascent Silicon Valley outreach that's taken place. All that is very early stage, but I hope we can say more about that. And there's also, Randy, maybe you're about to speak to this, but we do, of course, have an online tool for social media. Randy, did you want to say something on that front?
Yeah, so with regard to social media, clearly those incentives that that movie really highlights have created an environment where it's really hate is actually what's most promoted and what's most profitable, and so we're working with a platform that is relatively new in the space called Iris News that's developing a social media platform with better incentives. Now, it's early days for this, and we're helping them to test how this platform encourages better conversations. But I really hope that we'll be able to eventually roll this out on a larger scale and prove that if you have the right incentives in place, like shorter messages and allowing fewer at a time, to really add structure to a conversation and encourage new voices to come in, and also the way that people react to one another on that platform, that we can really prove that that online can be a fruitful place, a productive place for conversations like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, big job, right? But it's hard to imagine meaningfully turning the tide of polarization in another direction without really being engaged on the digital front. And so, we absolutely have to try. Okay, next up, let's go to Kelly McIntosh. Kelly, if you would unmute, you are welcome to join. Kelly appears to still be muted. Kelly, we still have you muted here. Can we?
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. I'm very much a newbie. I have taken part in one of the sessions. I live in northern Michigan, which is an extremely red area, and there has been what I will call a lot of attempts at political advancement through violence. So a lot of us are walking around on eggshells. At the end of the first session, and I hope you don't mind if I pull this from an organizational down to a personal need, but my thought was, okay, I've got to stop looking at these red-leaning people as part of a political group and more just as a person. And so I've been trying to practice conversations. And what I'm finding is that the responses that I'm getting are very much talking points from the political party. And so I'm wondering, in your work throughout the country, do the political parties truly represent the people who are interested in working in Braver Angels, or are they sort of like an offshoot of the political parties? I'm trying to figure out how best to walk into this territory that I'm very uncomfortable with. And if I had a feeling that as I'm looking around this room, with half the people of different beliefs, that they're not as aggressive and hostile and toxic as many of the situations I have seen in my county, neighborhood, area. I guess I'm just, well, maybe I could simplify it. Do I really need to be as nervous as I am? Because I am taking the second session this coming Saturday. We are trying to get a group organized here in Traverse City. And I'm willing, to work with the group to try to get that going, but boy, you got to be really careful what you say, where you walk. I mean, it's
Kelly, for the sake of time, we ought to move towards an answer to your question, but I deeply respect and honor the point that you're making, and would defer to April for some perspective on the question.
Sure. I imagine others here have thoughts on this too, but I really appreciate you being honest, Kelly, about should I be as nervous as I am? I admire that coming forth with that. And I would say a couple things. The first is that people often worry that everybody in Braver Angels is just we're the nice ones, right? In fact, I get told this sometimes, oh, it's okay, you're a conservative, but you're one of the nice ones. And what I would say is just that at our workshops and our debates, we consistently recruit people who we're told, you invited that guy? And have you seen his Facebook posts? And at our debates, we intentionally bring in people and say oh, you've got a real strong view here. Follow these 3 simple rules, but let's hear it. And I think that it is. I can offer the valuable fact that we do have some of the crazies or some of the more extreme people among our ranks, and of course they're not crazy, right? It's just that context cues people to respond in really different ways. And so with regard to do we need to be, so I don't see us as they're the political parties and they represent intensity, and then there's us and we're in the middle. It's not like that. And I also would say that, and John, you can speak to this as somebody who ran for office, we need to find ways to relate really well to the political parties, because they have to be part of depolarizing America, right? They have to giving them different incentives and different tools and different training and different just ways to interact with their environment has to be part of the solution here. With regard to the people that you're working with specifically, I think that I just admire anybody who's starting off on this, because in the same way that getting the people in the room is the work, every little initial friction point, that is the work. And it's the hardest at the beginning. It will get easier and easier as you go. But each of those friction points is an opportunity to practice bridging and to practice figuring it out and listening well and saying, I really didn't mean that that way, but it's really interesting to me that you hear that. I care about that, all that. So that's what I would offer. John, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but that's me.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I think I'll let it stand at that. But Kelly, thank you very much for your honest and sincere question. And yes, you're not alone in asking it. But the truth is that I think we needn't be as afraid of each other as we often are, and that's part of the point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we are coming down to our closing minutes. I am tempted to sneak in one more, but Michael Abrams, and if you're going to ask a question, it's got to be quick, and we're going to have to answer quick. And so, go ahead and unmute yourself and help close this out on the Q&A.
Okay, I had a question on my own, but since I don't have much time, I wanted to respond to a few people who already talked before me. First, Bonnie, like you, I'm going to vote for Chen for state controller. I am also from California. Usually I vote for Democrats, but in this case, I'm going to vote for Republican. Then on Hale's question about how to find Republicans, so we in Silicon Valley are in a similar situation. I'm affiliated with Silicon Valley's Braver Angels Alliance, and it's also an ongoing challenge for us to reach out to Republicans. But one possible solution would be, since we have most events via Zoom anyway, why not to pair blue areas with red areas and have joint events? So to balance out between red and blue states, for instance.
Excellent.
And I actually tried to reach out for someone from Kansas, from the Braver Angels Alliance, but I did not hear back.
There you go. Well, April is giving jazz hands to that, for she is a Kansas gal herself. Randy, I think you have something to say to that really quick.
Yeah, real quick. I mentioned hybrid events before, and my friend Mary pointed out that not everyone might know what that means. It's a blend between Zoom and in person. And so we actually got groups together in Texas and California, a red state and a blue state. And it was a phenomenal event. And we're hoping to follow that up with another pilot that will link urban and rural areas, right? This is really important for us. And so we're really excited about this possibility. It takes a lot of work and effort, and there are actually people on this call who actually helped to make that happen, and we're so grateful. But yeah, there's a lot of potential, and I love your idea, Michael, about really linking different areas of the country, and that's what we've tried to do, especially as we move to Zoom.
Yeah. So maybe national angels somehow have to facilitate this, because
Thank you very much, Michael. Forgive me, my friend. It's just that we're at the very close here. But you bring up a good point, and I'm glad you gave us the opportunity to shine a light on the hybrid events and the efforts that we've put forward in that direction. So yeah, it's a great idea you got, Michael, and we're already on it.
and last, really quickly.
But we do have to close, Michael. But thank you very much. Very grateful. And Michael, I wanna know more about what's going on in the Silicon Valley Alliance, because I think that's an area in the state of California where there's a whole lot more activity to come from as well. And so, okay, fantastic, folks. I just want to express my deep gratitude to everybody who joined us this evening. Obviously to our panelists, my friends and colleagues. Yes, jazz hands to you all, of course. Round of applause.
There's jazz handing everybody else. Anyway.
There you go. Well, that's right. And yeah, as we look forward, we're going to have another election in just a couple of weeks here. America bites its nails, waiting in anticipation for, the outcome of another consequential ballot. And then a couple of years after that, of course, it's going to be back to asking this question, who's going to be president of the United States? Who's going to lead the free world? And, democracy is always, in many respects, sort of a fragile undertaking. The idea of sort of leading a free society and being a part of one, one that actually works, one where we can operate the levers of civic participation in a way that doesn't fall to violence, in a way that doesn't collapse in on itself. It's not something that's ever guaranteed. And yet, things for many of us feel more unsettled, more uncertain, more fragile, perhaps, than they have in times past. But that's why the work of Braver Angels matters. That's why your presence on this call matters. And it's a remarkable thing to imagine that even in the midst of all of the tension, of all of the chaos of our politics, that we can see seeds sprouting across the landscape of American institutions, demonstrating new and better ways for us to be able to engage each other across the divide, on campus, in campaigns, in local governments, in your communities, at the kitchen table, right? Through media, through art and music, et cetera, on and on. And what it shows us is the fact that we as citizens, as neighbors, as countrymen and friends, we do have the power and the potential to make a deep, meaningful, and enduring difference in the spirit of our democratic society. We don't want to forget the fact that we have within us the power and the agency to improve the state of our country with respect to how we do politics. If we don't, what will we leave our children? What will we leave our grandchildren? What will our legacy be, right? But on the other hand, if we decide to call forth the best in ourselves, we will bring out the best in one another. And that's what it means for us to speak to the better angels of each other's natures. That's what it means for us to embrace our braver angels, to face the storms and the headwinds that ask us to see the worst in each other and to respond to that by saying, no, I am here to see the best. I am here to see the best in my fellow neighbor, in my fellow American, in my fellow man. And so with that, we would like to close you out with a song, but be sure, if you're not a member of Braver Angels, to join us. You'll find a link in the chat. Feel free to forward that along to a friend in the description. I have a little girl here who I have to put to bed, uninvited guest, but that's okay. She's asking for dinner. You're right, dinner time comes before bedtime. And so my greatest thanks to all of you, and my greatest thanks to all of you, and my best wishes to you, our deepest thanks. Let's go forward and build a house united. Okay, baby, let's go. Thank you all very much. Until next time.
We settled this long ago. Don't know what we're arguing for, 'cause in this fight nobody wins. I'm hoping now we can be friends. We're so much stronger together. We really need each other. Hey, but you're worried about me, I'm worried about you. You wear red and I'm wearing blue. When the real enemy lies, cheats and kills, taking everything from us at will. We need to open our minds, y'all. We need to open our eyes, open our ears. We need to open our hearts. We're so much stronger together. We really need each other. I'm talking about peace. I'm talking about love. But you're worried about me, I'm worried about you. You wear red and I'm wearing blue. When the real enemy lies, cheats and kills, taking everything from us at will. We need to open our minds, y'all. We need to open our eyes, open our ears, open our hearts. We need to come together. stronger together. We really need each other. Yes, we do. Oh, we really need to come together. Oh. But you worry about me, and I'm worried about you. You wear red and I'm wearing blue. When the real enemy lies, cheats, and kills, take it